how did a 40-minute lunch interview with Pete move him enough to stick his neck on the line for me when he hired me? And as I look back over the last number of years of my professional life and really personal life, like there's something God given that I have that allows me to make deeper connections faster.
Hi, I'm Ambar, and this is Ambar in real life. This podcast is my space to share the journey of becoming. Through honest reflections, personal stories, and conversations with people in my life who have shaped who I am. From health and self-worth to love, career, and everything in between, I'm here to speak what's true and sometimes comment on some of my posts that I've written on my blog, Ambar Virtual. If you are on your own path of growth and craving real connection, welcome. You're not alone. Hi, and welcome back to Ambar in Real Life, the podcast where we explore personal growth, emotional clarity, and what it really means to live life with love, intention, and perspective. I'm your host, Ambar, and today's episode is a special one for me because it's the first time that I am inviting someone into this space. If you have been listening to Ambar in Real Life, you know that this podcast is basically my audio journal. A place where I think out loud about adulthood, identity, and what it actually looks like to grow into yourself. And if there's one thing that I have realized over the last few years is this. Nobody really tells you how messy the process of becoming is. When you are in your early 20s and your 30s, sometimes beyond that, there's this quiet pressure to have things figured out your career, your purpose, your direction, your identity. But the truth is, most of us are just building the plane while we're flying it. And that's why I wanted my first guest to be someone who has deeply influenced how I think about growth, about leadership, and authenticity, my friend Scott Zehr. Scott has lived through the kind of experiences that force you to confront who you are, moments where life hits you hard enough that you have to rebuild your foundations. And what I love about his perspective is that he doesn't talk about authenticity like it's something trendy, like a self-help concept. For him, authenticity is something that you build slowly through life, through mistakes, through mentors, and through moments that really changed you. So today we are going to talk about that process. How you actually become yourself. Not the Instagram version of it, but the real life version. Welcome, Scott. I'm incredibly happy and so thankful to have you here.
Oh wow, Amber, that intro was phenomenal. Thank you for that. And I'm glad to be here. I'm proud to be here. I'm proud of what you have done in the short time that I've met you. Just a quick snippet, right? When I first met you and we started collaborating on another project, you're like, I don't know. I've never been the one on the camera. I'm the background girl. And now look at you, your own podcast, Amber in Real Life. I love it. So it's great to see that maturation professionally for you. And just ton of respect for what you're doing. And I appreciate you having me on. And I find it quite the honor to be your first guest. That's pretty cool.
I'm the one honored, to be honest. I've been talking to a lot of people about having them in the show and, talking, reflecting with me, and life happens. And most of us are just busy.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, but I actually wanted that, this first connection to be with someone that I truly admire. You fill my cup in so many ways, just as Morgan and Jamie do to our group. Is being the most incredible blessing that I have received.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. And you are one of the mentors. You with Jamie and Morgan, you were the ones who actually pushed me to do this and to feel more confident and to trust myself and my ability. So I'm the one honored here. I'm so thankful to you. So grateful because I believe that this episode is going to be so good for everyone who listens to it. And well, I can't wait to start. So are you ready?
Right. Yeah. Let's go.
Well, I want to start with this because a lot of people in their 20s feel like they're supposed to have life figured out. But internally, most of us at that age, we just feel completely lost. Did you ever have a season where you felt like you were just trying to figure out who you were?
Yeah, like the first 38 years of my life, probably. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. And it looks different as we get older, right? And when I think about back to my 20s, which was 20 years ago, man, I was like an amoeba. I was just jelly going with the flow. Wherever the wind blew, I went, and whatever the crowd was doing, I did.
Yeah,
But
I
what
relate
didn't
to
feel
that.
right at the time, yeah, what didn't feel right at the time is that I noticed that like I didn't really fit in with any one crowd. So I was the guy that was friends with the what would you call them? The preps, the cool kids in high school. Like I could be friends with them. I could be friends with the not cool kids. As we got out into the world a little bit, like yeah, I had my core group of like 3 guy friends or 4 guy friends, but we would hang out with the affluent crowd and we'd hang out with the non-affluent crowd. But like I was like the only one that was like amongst both crowds. Like these people would never talk to these people or hang out with them. Yet, so it's like, well, I didn't really fit in anywhere. So I just continually would bomb around, and then you get into when I got into my 30s, I had made a big move. I'd left my family's business and went out and started doing something different, and still didn't know. I still didn't know who I was, but I knew that I was probably getting closer, but I was chasing the wrong things. I'd look at the reports that the company would put out quarterly, especially about 2 years in, and I'd see my name on the top 10 list and then the top 5 list. And well, then I had to get, up to that top list. And I won awards trips to Cancun 2 years in a row, and it was all good. Everything was going great. And yeah, none of it made a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
interesting. I think we
yeah.
all
So, I
relate to
mean,
that.
I think we can. Yeah. I think we all have the seasons, but we have to understand that as we get older and we gain more knowledge and practical wisdom, the seasons look different, but it still could just be a season until you kind of grasp control of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that for me, having seasons in life and learning what each of them is teaching you or wants to teach you, I don't know, what's the lesson in that season specifically, is like that's what life is for, because we don't go to the same stages at the same time. I think I talked about this one previous episode where at the beginning we are all in high school or primary school, and we are all like, okay, we follow the same path for all these years, and then when we finally graduated and people started drifting into different paths, that's when we started to feel like, okay, something is wrong here, because people are getting into university, some are getting jobs already, some are taking the family business. But then you feel like, okay, something's wrong with me. Because the season that we just lived for us is like, okay, we're just, like you say, like a amoeba. Amoeba? That's the word that you used?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a shapeless bacteria, right?
Yeah. And then it's just moving around. You don't know what to do. You know what direction to take. So yeah, that's pretty tough. And I really think that we all can relate to that, at least to some degree.
Yeah, and you never know. Hindsight is 2020, which is a cliched saying, right? But when I began to reflect back on those years, my 20s and my early 30s, man, for a while I felt like, what a waste of space in this world I was in my 20s. And it felt like kind of embarrassed, kind of ashamed. But then more recently, as I reflected back on my 20s, I realized that it was like the sum of the parts does not always equal the whole, right?
Mhm.
And so when I looked back at my 20s and seen the impactful moments, not for what they were at the time, but for what they meant for the 40-year-old version of Scott Zehr,
Yeah.
and I began to appreciate it. And I still refer to my 20s as my lost decade
Mm.
because let's just face it, I made a lot of dumb decisions and did a lot of dumb things, and I was in my 20s. Knock on wood, thank God I'm still here to talk about it. But I much more appreciate the challenges, whether they were self imposed or not, at 40 than I did when I was 30. And certainly than I did when I was living through it.
Yeah. Right now, we can actually see things in life like differently. When they come, when they arise, the challenges, the lessons, we actually see them with a new perspective. And that's something that I really love people to do, to learn how to do that, because that's how you stop suffering unnecessarily. And that's how you start actually enjoying all of these things, even if they're not, the greatest things to happen. But I always say that things happen for a reason, and they don't happen to you, but they just happened because they had to. So, yeah. So, following this line of thought, what was the moment for you in your life where something happened and forced you to just stop and say, okay, I have to figure things out and find a new direction for your life?
Oh man, there's a lot that I could pick from, Amber. But I think there's a lot of like micro moments that led up to the one that truly sticks in my head the most. And this was about 3 years ago. I think I need to frame this up in a way for the listener to understand the context of how my brain works. But
Yeah.
I typically operate in like 10,000 foot mode all the time. That's where big picture thinking is where my brain likes to live, which is great sometimes. It's great for building a business, knowing where you want to get to, all that kind of stuff. But when you spend so much time in the clouds thinking at that stratosphere, you sometimes miss the fires that are going on, ground level, right?
Yeah.
And by the time you bring yourself back down, that fire is really going. And for me, the moment 3 years ago was I was grinding. I was honestly kicking ass and taking names in my career. I was thinking about the startup company that I have and how we're going to do this, and spending all my time there and not spending enough time just making sure I was connecting daily with my wife.
Mm.
And it led to a fight. I just couldn't even tell you what the fight was about. It was just, probably a stupid comment that somebody made, and then we quibbled and squabbled, and then the next thing you know, I'm overwhelmed with emotion. And I still hadn't at that point in my life decided for myself that me being on this planet was worth more than me not being here.
Mm.
And that night I can remember sitting in my garage ready to go, and my daughter, who was 3 at the time, came out in the garage crying, but not crying. She was emotional. And I pray to God every day that she doesn't remember this, because this is really not something that she should ever have to do or say. But she placed her hand on my arm and said, "Daddy, you don't need to eat a bullet."
Wow.
And I just remember the tears kind of drying up, and I just held her. And I was like, why does my daughter have to go through this? Why does she have to be the one? And this is a girl who, when she was 3 days old, saved her mother's life. And that's a story for another day. And then at 3 years old, saved her father's life. I don't know what the world has in store for her, but how much more could you get? I mean, and so in the aftermath of that, over the next few days, I realized that like I need to start making conscious decisions in my life, in my mind, to one, be more present, but also like if I don't figure out how to convince myself that I'm worth being here, or how to just get it through my head, like how to process the day-to-day stuff better so it doesn't hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't want my family to grow up in a household like that. And yeah, so I think that was probably the biggest moment where I got to see firsthand that my mental health wasn't just my problem, right? And then
Yeah.
when I understood the responsibility that I carried as a father in that moment to the 10th degree, and it was like, okay, this something has to change, right? And so that's when I kind of started out on, okay, how do I change it? What are the next steps? What do I have to do to wrap my brain around this in a way that my brain understands it?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to drag us into the depths of
No,
emotion
no,
there,
no.
but that's the big one.
No, no, no. This is perfect because this is life. And thinking that things are going to go, perfectly is the myth that I'm trying to debunk here. Like, real life is not perfection and things are not rainbows and roses and fields of beautiful flowers all the time. It's in these moments, are in the hard conversations with other people, or in the hard conversations with yourself. And when you have to say, okay, this is something that is not good for me first, but it's also not good for the people around me, in your case, with your family. And I think that we sometimes mistake that as a weakness or as something to be ashamed of, but it's not. We're human and we're emotional beings. And that's what makes us us. And I'm so proud of you because even though you had this very hard moment going on in your life, in your mind, in your heart, you still decided to stay and to fight and to, do your best to get into another direction and find life again or joy again in your life. Not just inside of you, but also with your family and taking strength from them. So that's something beautiful that we really don't have to remember. We're not alone with our own things, and asking for help is not a weakness. Doesn't make you a bad person or, someone broken or no. It's just a human thing. And to some degree, we all go through that. So yeah, I understand
And I
that
think,
part.
yeah, I think we definitely do. And the more I talk to people, the more I interact with people, just at trade shows or conferences or stuff like that, it's very interesting how, without even quote unquote trying, you learn that there's a lot more people than we care to realize that are dealing with emotional or mental baggage that they just need to get off their chest. Right. Or, it's kind of funny that this came up today. I was having a cup of coffee this morning. I was scrolling through reels while I was waking up, drinking a cup of coffee. So being really productive. Right. But this comedian that I followed for a long time, his name is Jeff Foxworthy. He's much older now, but he was telling how every time he gets on stage anymore, and he's not doing the big arena tours like he used to. But before he's on the side of the stage and he's thinking about, the show and the crowd and everything, he literally reminds himself kind of out loud, but somewhat under his breath, that I have to remember that everybody in the audience is going through something.
Hmm.
I don't know what it is. It might be financial. It might be mental. It might be physical. It might be emotional. It might be relationships. It might be business. It might be, but they're going through something.
Yeah.
And from his perspective, his point was, if you understand that about people, that they're all going through something. And in his case, as a comedian, he said, my job is to go in there and just give them a break
Hmm.
for an hour. And he said, that's what motivates me to go up on stage. Even at this point in my career, it doesn't matter if it's 20 people or 500 people, and just give them everything that I have, like 100% over and over, because they are going through something. I don't know what that something is, but I know that my role is to help them just take a break from the worry for an hour.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a really powerful statement from a comedian that you know, you think of comics, we think, oh, he's the funny guy, but
Yeah.
it's just funny how that kind of came up in this morning, and we kind of talking about, you never know who's on the other side of the conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what actually helps when you're rooted in your values, in your own self. And you understand that, hey, just as I know that I go through things, I understand that other people go through the same. Maybe not the exact same problems, but maybe they're struggling with something. So knowing that and staying rooted in that knowledge and accepting that as part of, what life is what makes us also part of this whole community, part of this whole world, in a sense that we're not alone. And I will repeat this all again and again and again. I mean, we are all going through something, and just accepting that and being compassionate towards each other is going to help and make things better for everyone. Because when you accept others, you also accept yourself somehow. And when you do the work, the inner work, you start, reflecting that into others. And that's the beautiful thing about growing up, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You have to be willing to acknowledge that, right? It's not just growing up that you realize that. You have to be willing to acknowledge that what you said, it may not be going through the exact same thing, but it's the same emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I don't like it when people say things like, well, you've never lost a child, so how could you possibly know what I'm going through?
Yeah.
No, I haven't, but I've experienced grief. I've experienced self-loathing. I've experienced, the feelings of, well, what could I have done differently? Could I have done something differently that would have prevented this from happening? Like,
Yeah. The internal questioning, like, what could I have done differently to
yeah,
make this not happen? And
right.
yeah, that's the other thing. We can control life. It just happens. And we just have to accept that as painful and that we might feel.
I know. And, it's funny, you talk about control, and I've truly believed this for a long time. I remember when I was in high school, I used to, that age, 15, 18 years old, somewhere in there. And I grew up with my dad was a worrywart. I mean, he'd worry about everything. He'd worry about the weather. He'd worry about anything. It just never made sense to me. And the only thing that made sense to me was if you can control it, why worry about it? Because you can control it. And if you can't control it, why worry about it? Because you have no control over it anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like a weird thing. And when I reflect back on that, sometimes I'm like, so like what led to my mental health struggles in the different times of my life? Because I really don't worry about stuff. Yet if something brought that on, right? Typically we always think that, oh, well, the stress from worrying is what led me to this. Not in my case. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't worry about it.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful, I think, skill to develop too. Because you're just losing your energy, you're losing your health, you're losing everything, time too. Just thinking about, okay, I'm worrying about this, okay, but what is worrying doing for you? Like, really, when you think about it,
Yeah.
nothing. To just get like more stressed and anxious, and it just spirals into something else that is not going to help you be in the state of mind that will actually make things clearer so you can fix the issue if you can, or just move on if you can't. So yeah, that's another thing that I've been practicing, and not just with things out of my control, but also with people and their reactions. And that's when the other day when we were talking, I said something like, okay, and just stop taking things personally, because I'm not doing anything with that. I'm not doing anything with the energy of other people, with their words. If they are, the tone was not right, if something is out of my control, I'm just like, it's not worthy of my time and my energy. And yeah, that's another principle that I live by now. And it's really changed how I am experiencing life. And it's been helping me a lot to really like enjoy and to know people more. I'm just more curious about, okay, why did they say this? Or, okay, why did this happen? So I think that being a bit more open, more curious about situations, about people, is also a good way to just stop the worrying loop and just do something more productive with your time, with life in general. Because we waste so much time just thinking what if, not the good what if, just like the bad ones, the stressful ones. And I'm like, I think that we can do something more with this situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the more time we spend on worrying about the problem, the less time we're spending on coming up with the solution. Right. And Jordan Peterson, the way he framed it up, he's like, if there's 100 problems, there's 100 possible solutions. And now the challenge becomes opportunity. If we lived in a world with no problems, we'd never have any opportunity.
Yeah.
And I probably didn't get the quote exactly right, but to paraphrase it, that's huge.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. So, Scott, after everything that we have just talked about, when you look back at your life, and this comes to me from conversations that we have had before, it seems like certain mentors appear for you like at the exact moment, like when you needed them, when you were ready to receive like the knowledge and the insights. So, what did those people see in you before you could see it in yourself?
I don't think I've ever been asked that question in this way before, Amber. And I've thought about that. What is it that, and I'll just say the names, right? What is it that Pete saw? What is it that Joel saw and other people? And Pete is the one that stands out to me the most because he took a chance on hiring me, and it wasn't my first job off the farm, but it was the first job off the farm where there was no turning back, because this was like a legit full-time gig where I was not going to be around the farm to pitch in, right?
Yeah.
And when he tried hiring me, I'll back up. So there's the interview process. And he said, that I have to run a background check. Am I going to find anything I don't like? Yes. And he's like, well, what is it? And I told him. And I said, but it's been like 6, 7 years since all that. It's out of my system. Whatever. So he sent it in. They did the background check. And his boss said, no. Actually, it wasn't his boss. It was his boss's boss. No, we're not hiring this kid. And he's like, no, there's something. I think I believe him. He's out of his system. Like, there's something about this kid. And I think he's going to do really good. And the guy told him that if he F's up, I'm going to fire both of you.
Oof.
Pete was like 6 years away from retirement. Why would he take a chance? Why would he screw that up? But he did. And he told me he did. Like, he told me that in the moment. And I immediately was like, wow, okay, well, I certainly don't want to disappoint him or make him look bad. And I'd asked him that question in the past, probably within the last few years. What was it? And he said, I just got a sense from you in our conversations that, you were somebody that would excel in a position where you could think big.
Mm.
And okay, that makes sense. And then later on in my career with that same company, I met a man named Joel. And Joel was he was the sales trainer, but personal development trainer kind of guy. And I think I was definitely craving for more of that type of stuff, even though I didn't really think he never really sold it as personal development. It was really just sales training.
Mm-hmm.
But because I was looking for any edge, any sales competitive edge, the materials that he was pushing out and the conversations he was having, I internalized. And I go back to having a conversation with Joel. It was last year. I was driving back from Maine. So I have like an 8-hour ride. So plenty of time to make phone calls. We were talking about some of the books, the sales books that he used to teach when he worked there. He's retired now. And one of them was called The Challenger Sale by Matt Dixon. And I was like explaining the situation that I was just in with a client, and I said, that's like it was like textbook challenger selling, Joel. You'd have been proud. And he's like, of all the people I've trained, there's only been probably a few handfuls over my career that really took that stuff as far as you did. And he said, that's really cool. And he went on to say, he believes in it because it worked, but he said, I didn't expect anyone else to internalize it the way I did and really, really believe in it. And he said, the fact that you did, it just shows that you're one of these types of people that understands there's more to the story, right? As I've matured and gotten older and understood myself more, I think that the thing that frustrates me the most about people is that they look surface level and never want to go any further. Like, whether it's a snap judgment, whether it's anything, I don't know, what we see is what we believe. And it's just not any further from the truth. The timing of those mentors coming in at those certain spots in life, I think, is pretty unique, to where I didn't know how to navigate professionally when I started with Pete. And Pete was the type of mentor that was very much of the belief that he couldn't hold my hand and teach me, but he could set up guardrails for me. And if I banged into a guardrail, he'd protect me and he'd have my back. And eventually I would learn to not hit the guardrails. That's exactly what I needed at that time, because I had zero confidence. And after he helped me off the guardrails a couple times and I learned how to stay in the middle of the road, that confidence just took off, professionally speaking, anyway. I don't know if I even answered your question.
It's okay.
But
This is way better.
I don't know if they'd ever word it this way, but I think if understanding myself now the way I didn't back then, if I had to go back and ask him this direct question, it would be something like the ability to connect with people in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
How did a 40-minute lunch interview with Pete move him enough to stick his neck on the line for me when he hired me? And as I look back over the last number of years of my professional life and really personal life, like, there's something God given that I have that allows me to make deeper connections faster. And it's a weird conundrum, Amber, because this maybe sounds counterintuitive to what I just said, but I'm not terribly gifted at remembering everyone's name or remembering even sometimes what they look like, but I remember the conversations. And sometimes I need my memory jogged. You would think that somebody that's able to make a deep connection with somebody quickly would store all of the seemingly important stuff. But I think in my case, what I prioritize as important is the stuff underneath.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, maybe maybe that sounds terrible.
No, not really, because what I'm getting, and this is just me reflecting on what you just said. For example, what Pete saw in you, maybe not he saw it, but he felt it. Because you're
Yeah.
someone that is, even though you didn't know yourself at that time, you were still you. In a sense that your essence was already shining, but you didn't know how to make it shine even brighter. You didn't know how to expand it so people will reach to it more easily. And I think that that's something that he saw. And I think that that's why I personally am drawn to you too, because we have met all these years through a computer screen. And still, I feel so close and so connected to you. And the same happened with Jamie and with Morgan because it's the essence of the person. So it's not just what the person looked like and what they were wearing and their name, but what they made you feel. So when you say this, that you remember the conversations, maybe you don't even remember the conversation, but you remember the feeling. And that's
Yeah.
something that I have learned to appreciate, the feeling and that beautiful energy that people put out. And that's what, right now at least, that's something that I'm really grateful when people are genuine, and maybe they don't know it yet, but that's part of their own authenticity. When you know that this is something that you do naturally and it comes to you all the time, like you have power with people somehow. And that's you. the most genuine, natural part of you. And I think that's amazing. It's just that we were not taught how to realize that or how to see it in ourselves.
I honestly think we all have that ability. I just think we have to figure out how to tap into it, right? I mean, I've probably always had that ability, and maybe that's why I was able to bounce between crowds in my 20s, right?
Yeah.
But now that I've been able to name it, I call it my authenticity compass. I'm able to understand maybe more of the how I was able to do that or why I'm able to do that. But to a point you just made, about the feeling that certain people give you, right? It just reminded me of the presenter stats, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but essentially, people don't really remember what you say. They don't really remember what you presented them. They remembered how you made them feel. And there's numbers that go along with it. It's like 20% of the pictures you show them in a slide deck or 30% of the words you say they retain. But did you make a connection that made them feel something?
Yeah.
That feel something connection works both ways. Either they felt something good or they felt something bad, but either way, they're going to remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that we can go on and on with this, just with this topic, I know, but
Yeah.
I know you and I are both busy people and we still have some questions for you that I would love to discuss.
All right.
So, yeah, I'm going to continue with this one, and this I feel that is very, I don't know, I feel very connected to it because I'm just 30. I just turned 30, and I know that you are almost 10 years ahead of me in that sense. But by heart, we're still young, and we're not growing older anymore. But
Don't tell
yeah,
my body that.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, what I want to know is, was there a moment in your life when you realized that you were trying to become the person that you thought you were supposed to be instead of the person you actually were? These people bridge, these energetically open. You're like a receiver. You receive, signals from everyone, and you make sense of whatever you are receiving, and then you put something out. And maybe that's also why people feel attracted to you and your energy, because you understand people. And I think that we are not that fine tuned into understanding the signals.
Yeah. Was there a moment? Gosh, yes, there was. But I need to go back and frame this up for you a little bit. When I was in school, at like middle school, I started writing like poems, and they were probably terrible. I never saved any of them. As I got a little bit older in high school, like I played basketball, and for those of you that can't see me above my bust, which Amber probably never has either, but
In
from the
pictures
shoulders
only.
up, yeah, from the shoulders up, you probably can't tell that I'm 5'8", weigh 285 pounds. I'm not exactly. I don't exactly look like a basketball player. Okay, but I played high school in basketball. Never said I was any good. I went to a small school, 100 people, K through 12, and I wasn't in the starting five. So take that for what you went. But yeah, somehow I always felt like, even though I wasn't, I felt like I had the ability to energize people, right? And I remember like just being at home by myself, or maybe I was working on the farm, and I would like practice the halftime speech, like rah 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 rah, never really had the opportunity to do that, like a pregame speech or a halftime speech. But I always enjoyed writing, and I always enjoyed like motivating. And honestly, Amber, it wasn't until so about 5, 6 years ago I tried writing a book, and I got part of the way into it. Really, I wrote half a preface for the book, and I just couldn't go anymore.
Mm.
And within the last year, I was able to start writing again, and that really started to unlock the joy that I used to get when I was a kid, 8, 10, 12, 15 years old, writing poems and songs. And it's funny how that all came full circle. But it was when I finished my first book project that I've yet to release. That was the moment in time that I knew that I had finally figured out who I'm supposed to become. And that's not that long ago. It's within the last year, but not who I'm supposed to become necessarily as me internally. I figured that out along the way, but who I'm meant to be for the rest of the world as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts by understanding how to live authentically within my identity as a human being. What are my non-negotiables? What are the lines I'm not going to cross? Understanding my purpose in life, my why, if you would, but also understanding how to, when something does come in that is challenging, understanding how to navigate that and internalize it and provide perspective internally on that as well. And so I think once I understood that, that really made me realize that, how'd you say it? When's the moment you realized you were trying to become the person you thought you were supposed to be instead of the person you actually were? I think that was the moment for sure.
Oh, I love that. I think that that's also something that I've been thinking and reflecting on myself because my writing journey also started when I was very young and I loved writing. I had so many books and diaries and notes and stuff. And in all the phones that I ever had, all of my notes app, they will always have things, messages, stuff. I was writing all the time. And then suddenly I just stopped. I can't pinpoint the thing that happened that says that because I always thought that I was going to be a writer. I've been loving to do this, writing, reading, all of these, let's say, this space for so long that I thought that that was the place where I was going to be. But then somewhere along the way, I just drifted somewhere else and I just went into a way different path. And now I'm going back to that again. And I really thought that at some point, I really thought that writing was not for me. And then, like, just like you, like, full circle, here I am again writing and adding another layer with this podcast, which also helps me write because I write all the things that I want to reflect on. So it's still writing
Yeah.
for me. I think that sometimes we really don't understand that deep layer inside of us, that little thing that says, okay, this is the thing that, let's say, that you're supposed to be or that you're supposed to do. And sometimes we take it that way, like, okay, this is like optional in the sense that maybe it's a path that we can take on, but it's not the one. And then we have to test and start seeing other stuff, other paths, other jobs, I don't know, and then realizing, oh, actually what I really wanted to do was this.
Yeah. Yeah. Drift is a good way to describe that. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably a conversation we should have on another podcast, but
Yeah, please. I'm going to take you, to
yeah.
fill the calendar form so we can do another thing. But yeah, so regarding this, what is something that helped you trust you on this path that you are now? Like right now, what was the thing that when you started writing again, what helped you trust yourself that, okay, this is actually what I want to do and my authentic, genuine desire is?
I think if you go back to the first part of our conversation where like we're all going through something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I believe my why is to use my God-given and acquired talents to challenge the status quo, make people laugh, and empower others to become the best version of themselves. So for me, when I began writing again and I finished that first book project, there was the realization that this is my why embodied, right?
Yeah.
Somebody reading it that didn't almost lose a spouse or didn't go through, I don't really reference this in this project, but didn't experience sexual abuse as a child or didn't experience whatever, they can still read that and understand. You can almost kind of, I guess, when I realized that just because we don't all share the same exact experience, we share the same exact emotions. That's when I realized that I was doing probably what I'm called to do, if you would.
Yeah.
For me, that's the driver. That's the writing motivation. And it's not because I'm right or have figured it out. It's because if I put it out there, this is what I've been through. These are the challenges. This is what worked for me. It may work for you. It may not work for you. A version of it might work for you. I learned through my life by taking bits and pieces from different resources, right? This is how we all learn.
Yeah.
You know, we don't just go to the well and drink the water and we become immediately wise. We take bits and pieces from everywhere. And I guess my thought is that if what I can share with the world becomes a bit for somebody, then that's the win.
Yeah. Just one person.
That's all it
If
takes.
only, yeah, it's only one person sees life differently from what we're putting out there. That's more than a win, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I really love your why because it's so you, and I think that everyone needs to have their own why to be clear and centered in the life, because that's like you said, that your authenticity compass and your why helps you to get that. So when you finally understood your why, what actually like changed in the way that you
Yeah.
approach your life?
Initially, I would say I would love to tell you there was this big, profound shift,
Yeah.
right? But why I felt like for me, it's an internal compass, and the why became the north on the compass, the purpose. There was a big rush of emotion when I finally felt like this is what I connected with. And I remember just crying and like, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what I've been trying to say all along. But I don't think the profound shift came until I was able to put the other pieces together,
Mhm.
the east and the west of my own compass. And it certainly did change my way of thinking through things. It started out as becoming like a filter, right? Is my day-to-day interactions with anybody I run into, am I going to help challenge their status quo? Can I provide that moment of relief like the Jeff Foxworthy story I shared? Or how is my daily interaction with this person going to empower them to be the best version of themselves? Right. And that last part is the part that you don't really know immediately how to practice that. It takes time to develop that muscle, if you would. And for me, that's where I say the writing came in. Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely love your story, Scott, and we definitely have to come back and keep going because I mean, we have been talking for so long now, for years, and it's just so awesome to have this platform and to share all of these insights because, oh my goodness, the amount of people that really needs a bit more of guidance and to see that, I'll say it again, they are not alone. We all go through something, and the struggles are universal, and the emotions are universal. But the experiences, the actual experiences, are the ones that are shaping us and helping us, learn who we are. So,
Yeah.
as we wrap up today, I just want to say that I'm so thankful to have you here. And I know there's a lot of people listening that feel lost, that they are feeling lost in adulthood, whether in their 20s, in their 30s, and beyond. And, this feeling of we are behind, or I'm broken, or something's wrong with me. So, what would you want them to understand about this season that they are in?
It is a season, seasons change, but I'm going to take it, away from the cliche, right? When we have a challenge in front of us, whether it's a challenge at work, a challenge at home, we have to take a minute and breathe and try to understand, okay, you know, what matters to Amber today may be not exactly the same thing that matters to you a year down the road or 5 years down the road. But the truth of the challenge in front of you, the same truth can be applicable at all three levels. Does that make sense? So, what does this challenge teach me today?
Mhm.
How do I think of this challenge, one, as an opportunity, and what's the lesson I can extract from it today? And is that lesson still applicable a year down the road? Is it still applicable 5 years down the road? If it is, if you can check yes on all three of those, you've probably successfully reframed that challenge into the opportunity that's going to move the needle. Because there really isn't a disconnect between those three, call them horizon lines, right? It's the same sun that's setting in the west every day. But if you watch that sunset, you're going to see different perspectives. But the common denominator is the truth, and that's the sun is still setting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that truth is applicable at all three levels. And for me, understanding that was a complete game changer. So that would be my takeaway is think of the season you're in, think of the challenge that's in front of you, and how do we reframe that challenge into an opportunity? And then what's the underlying truth that's consistent across all the horizons?
Love that. Oh, that was amazing. You haven't used that reflection before. I don't think that I have listened to you saying that. And I love it. I think that I'm going to copy and paste it somewhere.
Yeah,
But yeah, I know it's beautiful.
yeah, that's what's worked for me.
Mm. Well, and I really, really hope that it works for someone else because yeah, like the main theme of this conversation was authenticity, and authenticity for us at least is really not about perfection and having everything under control. It's more about alignment. And alignment for real is something that once you achieve it somehow or you have it like a bit more clear, oh my goodness, it really changes how you show up and how you do your life and how you enjoy it. So I'm so thankful for you for being here. Scott, thank you so much for staying all this time with me and talking. And I know that we could continue for another 2 hours, but I have to let you go. So I appreciate your time and appreciate you being here with all of my heart.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Amber, from the bottom of my heart. It was a joy speaking with you on this platform, and I always look forward to our conversations. So,
Yeah. Well, if this conversation resonated with any of you, or if it made you reflect on who you are becoming, on your alignment, on your purpose, whatever, we will really laugh because I will share all of this with Scott if you share your comments or leave your reflections down below. You can also send us a message. I always leave my Substack and my Instagram link below, so you can send us DMs over there, and I will make sure to send all of this to Scott as well if you have questions for him. And until next time, please take care of your mind, please take care of your body, and please take care of your heart. Bye, everybody.
thanks, Amber.